and then there'll be time if you want to ask questions at the end. So how did we get here? So back in 2010, 2011, we didn't have a 5-year facility renewal plan. So I was brand new, and the question was, well, what needs to be fixed? You know, where's the maintenance? What's happening with that? So we had a 5-year facility renewal plan, and it generated about $127 million worth of need. So at the time, we were drowning in debt. We had a lot of financial issues, and the thought of taking almost $130 million to the taxpayers just didn't resonate with the board at that time. So we said, okay, let's put it in front of the board, put it in front of the community. We actually did it at a board meeting, and we went line item by line item through that particular sheet, that facility renewal plan, and selected what was the most pertinent or the most urgent at that time. And then we kind of pushed off the rest, thinking that down the road, obviously we're going to have to address it, but it's just too big of a number to address right now. Whittled it down to $88.5 million, went for that particular bond in May of 2011, ended up passing it, and then 2012 till a couple years ago, we implemented it. A couple of good things had happened during that one. A lot of bidding. We had really good bids for that. We were able to generate, I think, some additional projects as well, just based on the fact that we hit an economy that allowed us to get good bids and get multiple bids. So that was really positive for that particular bond, and I feel like we did a good job building everything that we said we were going to build in there. So fast forward to now. So now we have the difference between the $88.5 million and the 127, almost $40 million. If you factor in some inflation, some interest, some costs in terms of construction, because it's not the same economy it was when we did it back in 2012. We've had to up that a little bit. And then there's really a couple of additional projects that pushed it to the $59 million. One being the STEAM Center that we're proposing for the back of this particular building. One being the indoor multi-purpose facility that we're looking at several properties for. And then some technology and a couple other items. So in terms of the history and how we got to this number, that's really what it is. I've had a bunch of questions or comments as I go through this about, well, what really makes up this bond? I've had some people with the misperception that, well, this bond is just about athletics. And it's just not accurate. We actually percentaged it out so you can see, if you take a look at the bond itself, and you take a look at the different schools, and get down to the...
Great.
Yep.
Is there any way you can dim a light or
hey, Lindsay, can you dim the lights up here so they can see the screen better, please? You can cut this whole row if you want. I don't think people care if they're looking at me or not. Lindsay? Hey, Lindsay?
Well, anyway, go ahead.
Hey, Lindsay? Can you dim these lights up here so they can see the screen better, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
So it actually dims it, as I was talking about. If you want to look at percentages of the bond, and you kind of put it in buckets.
Thank you.
General improvements, classroom, STEAM. STEAM is the acronym for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And then athletics, instructional technology, and site work. One of the things that we've kind of talked about in terms of this particular bond, it's really heavy in the classroom. STEAM, instructional technology, actual classroom renovations. What would a general improvement be? That could be a roof, that could be a parking lot, that could be windows, or any windows, but it could be those types of items. And then the rest, again, you're talking almost 37% in terms of instructional technology and STEAM. Why so much in instructional technology and STEAM? Every year we get a listing from the state of Michigan of the hot careers, the hot jobs out there right now, and we try to evolve our curriculum to align with those particular jobs. It's called the Top 50 list. It aligns with our CTE, or Career Technical Education Programming. And then what we do with that, those particular things, is we invest in those and then get our kids prepared to either take internships, dual enrollment opportunities, all those different avenues, so that our kids, as soon as they get out of high school, will have a leg up and they'll be able ability to go into these programs, qualify for them, and that's kind of where the STEAM idea and the instructional technology and the renovations in the classroom have come from. So that's really the breakdown of the percentages of the bond. Again, if you look at athletics, about 15.79%. When we go through this, really all that is a baseball, softball complex at Hawkins. It's a cloverleaf field, and then really the indoor multi-purpose facility. Those are really the two big ones in terms of that. Now the thing about the multi-purpose facility, that's just, you could probably count that too for some co-curricular, because it's not just athletics. The band, obviously, we would have them practicing throughout the year. There's some opportunities for robotics in there, Science Olympiad. You could do a number of things in conjunction with the city. I think the opportunities for that particular facility, we probably don't even know all the different things that could go in there at this point. Those are just some of the things that when we did our focus groups, and we're talking originally about that particular idea, those were some of the biggest ones that came out of it. And we did meet with all those groups. Some people ask me, well, what about this dome? Way back in the beginning of the idea of the bond, when we were meeting, we were looking for a way to extend facility use. We have these, beautiful facilities that we use like crazy when the weather's good, and then they go dormant when the weather turns not good, right? And so we've talked about some options. One of them, our original idea was to put up a temporary dome or bubble, like you see maybe at some other locations, over top of the field behind the high school. We thought, okay, that could extend that use. We started looking at long-term viability, the length of time it's warranted, how long they actually last, and what we found was it wouldn't really work till the end of the bond. We like to install things that really you get the best bang for your buck on, and they live to their end of their useful life while we're paying for it. And so we kind of changed gears and took the temporary out of that particular bubble out back and started talking a little bit more about a permanent structure. The structure we looked at is kind of steel frame structure. The outside material is like a PVC almost material, but it's a little bit pliable. And it has a very good insulation factor. If you know anything about insulation in your house, it's an R42 value. So the ability to heat it, keep it cool in the summer, and really utilize that particular facility would be something that we could do year-round. In terms of where it's going, we're really looking at the entire district in terms of that. If the bond were to pass, we could see it maybe by the main stadium in front of the high school, depending on topography. We've looked at Maltby, we've looked at some areas at Hawkins, we've looked at some areas at Scranton. So the actual location of it is still kind of up in the air in terms of that. Again, we don't spend a lot of taxpayer dollars prior to votes on these things for what ifs. That wouldn't be prudent. That wouldn't be really taking a good look at that. All the properties that we talked about could have it in some location. We just have to see what we've done again, where we get the most bang for our buck in terms of that, and where we have the safest opportunity for travel there and participate. So that's kind of the percentage. Are there any questions on the percentage before I get rolling on the facilities? Well, that's good.
Actually, Dr. Gray, could
Yep.
you maybe go back to that page and scroll up? I just wanted to see how it was allocated by school.
Yep. There you go. So it's a good point as well. And when I get to the actual schools, you're going to see some, especially where you can have parity, so elementaries obviously, you're going to see some disparity between them. You're going to think, well, I don't understand why every school isn't getting the exact same thing. Because not every school was built at the exact same time. And because in the last bond effort in 2012, not every school got the exact same pieces to it. So a really good example, I think two good examples, would be Scranton and Hilton, right? Scranton and Hilton were built in 90, opened in 91, so they're almost 30 years old, right? And those buildings have, other than the maintenance we do on them, and we fix stuff and keep it looking nice and really good for kids in the classroom, they haven't received a whole lot. So their HVAC units, their parking lots, their roofs, those types of things are coming due. Dr. Chesney?
Question about the multi-purpose facilities.
Yeah.
Since we don't know where it's going or what it is or what it's doing, where is it on here and how much is it?
We'll get to that.
So is it included in this table?
It's included in this price. Yep, it's a little over $3 million complete. And, again, we do know we know mostly what's going in it. We just think there are some additional pieces that people will want us to do with it. And, again, we'll have to survey the properties to see, one, where it's gonna fit best, longevity in terms of the property itself, and, all of those pieces. So, yeah, it is in the numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question. Under industrial technology, there's 580,000 allocated to the elementary schools.
Yep.
Could you give an example of what that would be?
So at every particular elementary building, it's STEAM equipment. So science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. And the way, when you look at technology for a particular building, you allocate it per pupil. And so what you'll see in almost every building is the STEAM allocation is almost identical in terms of the dollar figure, because almost all of our elementaries are about 500 kids. So you put a division problem on the kids with a dollar amount, and then that's how you get the allocation of a certain amount of STEAM dollars and technology instructional pieces going into a particular building. So if Hilton has 500 kids and their allocation is A,
Right.
and then you go to Maltby and they're twice as big, in the bond application you'll see their STEAM renovations and equipment are twice as big. And then if you go to the high school, theirs is going to be twice as big as Maltby because they have twice the enrollment. So it's based on a per pupil allocation, is typically how it's done.
Well, I was just, because when I pictured that, that was one of the things that I thought we needed emphasis on was the building and trades and skills with our hands as electricians and that. And I just didn't see the application, I guess, into elementary school on that. I thought there would be more in the high school.
So the high school does that presently,
Yes.
does those types of programming. So we have something called CTE, Career Technical Education.
Right.
And we actually have a consortium countywide. It's called LATEC. So it's the Livingston County Technical Education curriculum. Okay? And what happens there is it wouldn't be very prudent in our county for there to be 5 EMT programs in 5 different schools, right? Because you're replicating it, you're creating the same programs. There aren't a lot of teachers in those anyways. So what we do is we run programs throughout the county, and we have them in different districts, and then our kids can attend those other programs. So like here, we have health occupation. We have auto technology lab. We have teaching. We have cadet teaching. We have engineering. We have several levels of engineering. So we have all these programs, and our kids sign up first. And then each other district has an allocation by percentage based on their enrollment for that particular class. Now, if there's open seats at the end, more kids can come in and go from other areas. It just depends on that. So that's been in place for a long time. And again, that ties back to some of those programs. Like we have welding. Welding's really come,
Right.
I would say, very popular in the last 5 to 7 years because there's a lot of jobs, not a lot of welders. You can earn a pretty darn good salary in terms of that. So part of our auto lab became welding in terms of that. Health occupations, we're maxed out. We could open 5 more classes there and do that. We have EMT, we have aviation, we have all those things. We actually met with, what's the electrical union?
IBEW?
Yep. We met with them to see if there was an implementation we could do in the schools in a LATEC type situation for that. You got building trades offered at Howell if our kids want to take it there. You have junior ROTC over in those particular places that our kids can participate in as well. So we really look at it as a county level so that we can really leverage our resources. And you don't have 5 EMT classrooms, 3 of them sitting primarily empty across the county. That's kind of how it is. That's a really good question. Thank you. So again, Hilton, if you look at Hilton, STEAM classroom renovations, STEAM equipment, table seating, that's going to be in every single building. And again, when the dollar figure was put there, based on a per pupil allocation, and if you looked at the actual application, which we have online as well, so you can see the actual numbers, those dollar figures would align. You'd see Hilton and Horning and Hawkins and Spencer would be the exact same if you look across.
What's the difference in regular table and seating and STEAM table and seating?
So most of the time in the STEAM situation, there's more flexibility to them. It's not your traditional table. It's tables like you might see in our media center at the high school here, where they can be pushed around. They might have power capabilities in them if you're utilizing something in terms of that on the table. The durability is a little different than a kid just generally sitting in it because they're probably constructing something on top of it. There's a number of different changes to that. Carpeting, mechanical plumbing, chiller, boiler, all of those again, at Hilton, remember that building's almost 30 years old. Those have not been replaced. They've definitely met their usable life. They have been paid for, and that opportunity there is going to be something you're going to see at Scranton as well. Bottle filler stations, if you've been in any of our buildings, we have a number of those drinking fountains that you can also get the filtered water through the bottles in terms of. That's not a big ticket item, but we do have a lot of kids that utilize those. If you look at the count on any of those in our buildings, thousands and thousands of bottles that are filled. Media room lighting, the media center in that particular building, again, we need to upgrade the LEDs, some different items there. Instructional technology devices, educational technology equipment. You'll see this line item in every building as well. And what that is like in the 2012 bond, they're re-infusions of technology. So we've moved away from your standard sit and get in front of a computer lab, and we've moved to a lot of Chromebooks, carts, iPads, those types of things that again allow for the interaction. You couple it with some of that movable furniture, and now you got these creative spaces that can change depending on the class. The one thing we didn't want to do, I've seen this done in bonds before, drives me crazy, is you put a number for technology and you buy every classroom the exact same thing. And it all goes in the classroom, and then half of it gets utilized, half of it doesn't. So in this particular one, what we do is, again, by pupil, we put a certain allocation into a building, and then we have committees. We have committees that meet when we're putting in playground equipment. We have committees that meet when we're putting in STEAM equipment. We have committees that meet when we're looking at technology. So our technology department with its chairs would come over. If we were looking at new type of situations, we'd probably hire some consultants from the outside. They would come in as well, and they would kind of forecast for us what's working in educational settings today and where are we headed in the future. The other big question I get on technology is, why would I want to pass a bond that is going to take 23 years to pay when technology is outdated in 4 to 5 years? You can't, the first thing that gets paid off in any bond, there's a cap of 5 years on your technology. So the technology portion of that's one of the very first thing that gets paid back in terms of your bond. Technology cannot be bonded past 5 years. So all the technology you're looking at in terms of this would be that. Site work there would primarily be restricted to the parking lot. Again, that's a parking lot that's almost 30 years old. There's been some new designs. There's been some separation of bus versus parent drop-off and pickup in that parking lot, along with its lighting, has used its usable life. So site work, parking lot, sidewalks, and site lighting will primarily do that. You'll see this graph at the end of every building as well. This is a very important graph. This is actually the financial picture of the particular proposed bond. If you look at the yellow line and the green line, the yellow line is the 7.19 mils that everybody in Brighton area schools taxpayer-wise pays today. That was voted up back in 2012 from about 6 to about 7.19. When we cleared the 7 mil mark, probably one of the more important pieces of that was that it allowed us, because you have a requirement to be at least 7 mils, to go into something called the school revolving loan fund. That allows districts to borrow money from the state, and it gives a smoothing effect to some of the payback in terms of that. Now, if you look at this particular item, and I know it's not super easy to see, but if you look at the yellow line and you go to 2019, 2020, which is where we're at right now, and you see it ticking along, when you hit the green line, that would be if the $59 million bond did not pass. So if it did not pass, and the district chose to do nothing until 2024, it would drop from 7.19 mils down to about 1.92 mils, and then it would trickle down for the remaining 23 years until it's paid off. If you remember, we went for the last bond, we looked at a 30-year. We had some good days when we did the sales of the bonds. It actually allowed us to shrink that a little bit. Why is that important? Because interest on these things is costly. Some other people will ask the question, well, what about a sinking fund instead of a bond? A sinking fund is a little different than a bond. Not everything in this particular list qualifies under a sinking fund. And a sinking fund is for general maintenance. You might remember the district used to have a sinking fund. Back the year before I got here, it expired. The district didn't go for it. The difference is, when you go for a bond, you generate a certain amount of dollars, and then you spend those dollars on the construction or the technology, and then the payment happens in terms of that. The difference with a sinking fund is you're generating revenue each time you collect the taxes, or a full summer tax, and then there is an interest, there's no interest, you just spend it. So some people ask the question, well, why not that? The amount of mills you have to raise in terms of that for even this amount would be much higher. So if you look at a sinking fund, our district, our Brighton Area Schools District, the SEV, Standard Equalized Value, is about $2 billion. $2 billion for our area. So 1 mil on that $2 billion would generate about $2 million. So if you did a mill for a sinking fund, in 1 year you could only generate $2 million. The parking lot alone at Scranton is almost $4 million. So if you wanted to do a Scranton parking lot, you'd have to wait 2 years generating that $4 million from the sinking fund. That's if the price stays flat, which it never does. And then that would be the difference. So that's really the difference. The other piece with the sinking fund, our sinking funds are more restrictive in terms of what you can spend them on. It's really maintenance items. And then for the bond itself, and there's no guarantees in the sinking fund. So you generate those funds, you can primarily spend them on any of the preventative or maintenance type issues that you want. The way I always described it is, if you were a giant, you pick a building up and shake it, everything that fell out you could not touch with sinking fund dollars. Everything that stayed inside, like roofs, windows, doors, parking lots, you could. So that's really the difference between a general bond and a sinking fund. This is obviously a proposed general bond. Again, when you take a look at the green line, that would be without the bond. The yellow line would be if the $59 million did pass. If it did pass, you can see it extends the 7.19 mils for a couple of years. And again, depending on the taxable rate, which we don't get to set any of that stuff. It's all set for us. And then in about 2026-ish, it would drop to 6.11, and then you'd see a significant drop the year after that if the district did nothing else in terms of that. One interesting piece as well is at the end of this particular year, the only debt we'll still have on our books is from 2012 forward. It's a rarity for a district our size. Typically there's more debt than that because we have 1.3 million square feet of facilities. So there's always something happening, right? And so, you know, that chart's, I think it's pretty interesting in terms of the numbers on it. You may not, but I find it interesting. And if you look long term, I think one thing it does say is, at least bonding-wise and financial-wise, the district's set up in a pretty good situation. The estimated bond millage study actually assumes a taxable value growth rate of 2.5. If you look at our history for a long time, it's large, much larger than that. But again, we don't set those numbers. We don't just put anything on the piece of paper either. So like when we go through these projects that we're showing you, we take all this to the Department of Treasury. We sit down with the Department of Treasury. They run through every number, every line in terms of our items and make sure that everything qualifies. Another big thing is we can't overbuild. So let's say all of a sudden in this particular bond, which we're not, but we were proposing 25 new classrooms on this building, right? That would never pass muster at the state level because you can't overbuild. You can't build in hopes of enrollment coming in the future. How do we know enrollment coming in the future? Another requirement that we have to do is we have to go out and hire a third-party contractor to come in and run our enrollment projections for the next 30 years. So we do our enrollment projections for the next 30 years, not us, another company, and then we put our pieces in the application, and then we go to Treasury, they certify everything, and then the bond language is certified, and then it gets put in front of you for a vote. Swell?
So I understand where the drop-off starts.
Yep.
But before that, I'm a little puzzled. So from now until the drop-off of the green line, are you saying there's no impact on?
Correct. You're paying 7.1 million.
It's just the same.
That's what you pay right
And
now?
then
Yep.
It just goes down, but it goes down a couple years later,
Yep.
pretty much at the same sort of precipitous rate, but then doesn't quite go down as much
Correct.
until it gets to the very end.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Well, and an interesting point to that would be, so my next question would be, how much could you really generate then as a school district if you were to stay at 7.19 mils? So as a district, we could generate roughly $350 million without increasing the 7.19 mils. Now, we're not proposing that, obviously, but, you know, that's what you could do. See?
Why don't we decrease it then?
Why don't we decrease what?
The mill rate?
Because you can't. Again, we don't get to set the schedule. Treasury and our financial people set the schedule. You'd have to pay the 7.19 with the 59 till then. With it dropping with the green line, that's as soon as it can possibly drop.
That's a good question.
Yeah. But you can't, we can't arbitrarily change that. They have to change that. We could ask for more money. We can't tell people that it's going to be less.
Yeah, but it seems to make mathematical sense that if we can generate 355 million at 7.19 mils, then we could generate a reasonable amount at a lot less mils.
But you are. So what we've proposed is 59 million. So if you did 350, that 7.19 would be a straight line all the way to the end of that 23 years. Okay? So the 59 actually extends that for those couple of years, and then you start to see the drop, and then you see the line that's a little bit above the green line. And again, that also factors in the school bond loan fund and the smoothing of that for the remainder of that. Again, we don't get to set that. That's not something we get to do. So it'd be great if you could, because you could probably do that. And I would say there probably are small opportunities with like a refinancing of your existing debt that could change it. What happens if taxable values go through the roof because everybody loves the school system and everybody's buying houses? That could change something. There's factors that could influence it, but that we have to give worst case scenario. And that's what you see in front of us. And again, we don't get to set that rate. They set it for us. We just get to present.
What was that rate prior to the 2012 one?
It was around 6. Yep, we added about 1.19 mils. If you look at Hawkins, Hawkins got quite a bit last time, different than Hilton. But again, we have the steam renovations. The only thing we didn't touch inside that building was the 4th grade wing. The 4th grade wing would have, restrooms, lockers, cabinetry, classrooms. Those are one thing that last time we decided to push further because they're still usable, but they've come to. We need to do some items with plumbing with different pieces there, the lockers, all of those. Bottle filler stations, classroom dividers and learning labs. Those are again flexible spaces. Instructional technologies for people allocated just like the other buildings. Steam equipment, tables, and seating, again, just like Hilton, with a per pupil allocation. And then site work for that particular facility for baseball, softball. One thing we changed, and I'll be right with you. One thing we changed, I'd say 7 or 8 years ago, is we used to run multiple sports at every facility. And especially our grass facilities, were just taking a beating because we were running lacrosse and football and baseball and all these things at a particular place. We thought, what we should probably do is start to separate some of these particular facilities, specialize in a particular athletic opportunity there, and then manage that particular turf in the off-season. So we changed Maltby to football and lacrosse. That's all we were on there. Other than the one baseball field. We made Hawkins baseball, softball, and we managed that as baseball, softball. Because we used to run a lot of youth football there and it just tore it to shreds. We do the same thing with Hilton. Hilton runs primarily soccer, and so on and so on. We found that that's allowed us to get different usage time patterns and really maintain that grass, make it safer, make it a better opportunity to play. So with that being a site like baseball, softball, what's a clover leaf? The clover leaf is when you put 4 fields together and then you put a press box in the middle, utilize your space the best, you get your best bang for your buck, and you end up with 4 more fields. So and it fits in that particular. So that's what it will be. Questions about Hawkins? Oh, you had a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so they're just doing one clover leaf?
Yeah,
And
that's all
how,
they
so
were-
we're only
they're
gonna have 4 fields total?
No, the ones in the back stay. We just redid the one in the back.
Right, that one
There's
field
another one to the
stays, so
left.
we'll be down to 5?
No. There's 2 in the back. 3. 3 in the back, 4 more, so you'd have 7.
Okay.
And then you can pick up Scranton's, obviously. Horning, got a ton of stuff in the last bond. So as you look at Horning, the list is smaller. Steam renovations, again, particularly allocated. Steam equipment table, same as we talked about before. Structural technology, change control. Really the only difference is the front area there floods. There's some stuff we have to do with the pitch and with some of the drainage and that. But that's primarily it. If you look at Spencer, again, Spencer got quite a bit in the last bond. This one, steam, structural technology bottle filler. And then we did half their parking lot in the last one. We separated and put a bus drop off in that particular one. The main parking lot would change. Really a bigger item for us there is getting cars off of Spencer Road. That building's a nightmare for us in terms of morning, afternoon traffic. Spencer Road does not have big shoulder areas for cars to pass. We may cheat up onto that property. You know, I don't know, put something in so cars can get in and out better. It's just a really tough property for us to get cars in and out of. And again, safety is, you know, really our #1 priority. So we want to make sure we do that. We'd hire a specialist, obviously, to come in and do a traffic study for us and take a look at some opportunities. Maltby. Steam renovation, steam equipment, again, probably twice as much as what they get Gilliam introduced to, twice as many kids. Media center. The media center's big, it's nice there, but it's outdated, needs to be, you know, up. And if we're looking at I missed the cafeteria, and then media center. If we're going to host a lot of our STEAM opportunities in our media centers, which is, you know, generally the idea that media center needs to come up to the 21st century. Instructional technology devices, athletic field irrigation. It's probably one of our most utilized fields out there, one of our biggest properties other than Hawkins, and so to grow grass, that would be another opportunity. Field lighting, extend some of that usage, and then utilities for concessions and toilet. Presently, we have people coming in and out of the buildings all night long. That's hard for security. That's hard on those particular things because we have nobody watching those when they're coming in and out. And then some additional playground. Questions on both? If you look at Scranton, I would put Scranton again in the category with Hilton, about 30 years old. A lot of people ask me about the parking lot out there. I actually think that parking lot's in pretty darn good shape for 30 years old. I'd love to run across somebody's driveway for 30 years and see how long that holds up, and see if it would stay in as good a shape as Scranton. So, you know, I think that one actually has held up pretty well. I think that building along with Hilton, you know, we've spent a lot of money as a district on maintenance and on preventative maintenance, especially in the last 7 to 8 years. We're spending every year millions of dollars on upgrading boilers. We're spending millions of dollars on our parking lots, on our window, on our electrical, everything that we can do to make sure our buildings are where you guys like them. We've heard a lot of compliments in relation to that, I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years. But again, in that building, you have the steam renovation, steam equipment, industrial technology. There's a small section of roof we haven't replaced there. Corridor locker replacement, they're 30 years old. It's time for some new lockers. We've refurbished them, I think, twice now, and so they've come due. Classroom unit ventilators, that's what heats and cools those particular rooms. Those that are at the end of their usable life. HVAC units for the interior classroom, air handling, mechanical. Again, there's a theme there when you take a look at that building. And just like a furnace in your own house, eventually you got to replace a furnace in your own house. You got to replace an air conditioner, and those are where they are. Bottle filler stations. One of the other pieces that we've talked about, geez, I think the 11 years I've been here, I've heard it every year for 11 years, is the challenge of having one entrance and exit at that place. That's been something that, one, is just a logistical challenge for us. Two, I would put it in the safety category. I think that building needs a second exit. That's what we've heard in terms of that. It'd be nice to push parent traffic out one way, maybe towards Lee Road, push bus traffic out towards Maltby Road, so we could separate that as well. If there was ever an emergency up there, it'd be nice to have those particular options as well. I think the other thing it does is it gives us another tie to another municipality. Lee Road would connect us to the city, then we could utilize some of the services for the Lee Road area too. So that's another option in terms of that. And really, I think has been talked about since the building was built, to be honest with you. So Lee Road, parking lot repaving, and then well tanks. Some of our buildings are on wells. Most of our buildings actually are on wells. There's only a couple that have a city like water system. And the water around here is tough on our tanks and softeners and those kinds of things. So really, again, for both Hilton and Scranton, those mechanical, those nuts and bolts type pieces that, again, were new when the building was built. We've maintained over the years, and we've spent district dollars to do so. Eventually they come due, and that's what this is, one of the things this is proposed for. So that's Scranton. I hope there's questions about Scranton. If you look at the high school, we have the multi-purpose facility earmarked because you have to put it on a building. We told Treasury, look, it could end up at 4 buildings, one of 4 buildings, and we have to link it to one of them though. So the original drawing is here. Steam Center Edition. You might say, well, what's that? There's been a lot of conversation about branching out in this particular building. I think there was a question earlier about CTE or electrical, those types of things. And so what we're proposing is to add about 20,000 square feet to the back of the high school. It would be in that little playground area that isn't utilized anymore, right next to the auto shop, which gives us good connection with that auto technician lab. In this particular facility, again, you could run a myriad of programs through from not only our engineering programs, but robotics, science Olympiad, auto tech, our coding classes. There's a million different uses for that. I think that's one question I get consistently that I talk to people about. If I earmark one particular program for that, I think we're doing a disservice to the space. And so this is, again, a flexible space. It allows us some opportunities in the building. There's doors that roll up that allow us to spill over onto the concrete. Again, just a really nice flexible space that can be utilized by, again, a number of different programs in that particular building. And I think some people struggle with that. Like, you need to tell me exactly what's going in there. And again, as we evolve, if you were in our auto technician lab 9 years ago till today, and you would have told me that it's going to look like it does now, I wouldn't think that'd be the case. If you were to go into our engineering lab, which used to be 1 classroom, that's now 3 that we did in terms of the bond, those classrooms are ever evolving. And so we want to be able to, again, make good decisions for the long haul of the school system instead of kind of pigeonholing ourselves into one particular program or one particular item. This facility might be utilized most by a program we haven't even implemented yet. And that's great. It gives us some flexibility in terms of that, some ability to change with time. So that's kind of what that looks like. Again, conceptually, we're not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on getting schematic design items prior to people being able to take a vote on this stuff. So that's why that is what it is. Again, as you go down this list, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Approximate cost for the steam center?
I think that one was close to 5.5-ish. I'll post again, it's already on our website, but I'll post the actual application itself. It breaks it down very specifically by number. But I think that one was in the 5-ish range. Now, if you look at site work and that, it could push it up a little to 7-ish. So that's kind of where that is. Then you got the equipment. Steam renovation, steam equipment, instructional devices, partial roof. We've replaced a ton of the roof in this building, whereas if you ever wanted a really cool field trip, go up on the roof of this place. It's daunting how big the roof is on this place. And I remember, or some people might even say now, why didn't you just replace the whole roof the last time? We don't go on that logic because, again, remember, it's 1.3 million square feet. It would be the same as if I bought 36 buses at one time for the district. All we're doing is leaving a big problem for the next person that's in this particular seat or in the board seat. Because now at some point they're going to have to figure out how to buy 36 buses, which is about $3.6 million at some point when those buses go bad. So we try to stagger it. Same thing with roofs. If you have a building like this building that's 625,000 square feet, if I replace the entire roof in one shot, guess what's going to happen 25-ish years from now? Some person after me is going to have to figure out how to replace that much square footage of roof at the exact same time. I think that's the other piece why we focus so hard in the last, again, 5 to 7 years on putting money into our operational pieces during the day, putting money into preventative maintenance, fixing the things that we don't think really need to be on this list, and having the ability to, again, spend money on boilers and fixing up parking lots and some roofs and windows, those types of things that in the past maybe were pushed a little more down the road and then ended up on this list. So managing that has allowed us to not make those huge purchases that, again, leave a legacy problem for somebody else on the list. Robotics equipment, I don't know if you know, but our robotics team's pretty darn good, and so is our Science Olympiads, so our other programs in the engineering field, which again is a really hot job market for us. So we have some equipment in that area. The parking lot that we're talking about, if you go behind this building down by Leaf Lake, the only parking lot we didn't replace last time, and some of it was strategic because we had to house our trailers and our equipment down there, was the parking lot down by the field house at the bottom. We'd also like to tie that in possibly to the parking lot that's the field house entrance to make a loop around the particular building. But that would be that parking lot. And then our loading dock, which is right outside of our cafeteria, that side. It's just, again, it's been here for decades and decades and decades. We get a lot of shipments here. It needs to be firmed up a little bit. It needs to be changed a little bit in terms of the load. So that's really the high school look. If you look at, if you go to transportation, Miller, and the Beck building, if you look at transportation, one thing we've struggled with for a long time is our maintenance operational piece of this district is scattered. I have a little pole barn here, I have a garage over here, I have a couple classrooms here. All of those things create some challenges for us when we're trying to continually maintain and fix things in this particular building. So a new maintenance building that we put out at the transportation center, would be a place to store, a place that we could add stocks and the most important pieces that we have for the district. Some of the equipment would be upgraded. The roof replacement's actually the transportation building. It's not the new building, obviously. But that transportation building's been there for a long time. And then the parking lot, mill cap replacement. Really where we need that is in the middle, where our buses park. If you've ever been behind what used to be VG's, now is Bush's. That's where our buses all are housed. We need it to be safe when people get on and off the buses. Again, they're heavy, the parking lot can deteriorate. And so that parking lot's been there a long time and is proposed to be replaced. Miller got pretty much a total overhaul last time from the senior citizen center all the way through the building. Really there, the only piece again, and it's at the end of its usable life, is the parking lot replacement. This building, because I'm usually at my building, the Brighton Educational Community Center, we know it as Beck. Athletic field concession and toilet building. There's the little one up there. That building's old. That building we put a lot of money into every year to try to maintain it. A new concession and toilet would be great there. And then Sloan Field, lighting and grass improvements. Again, those lights we fight quite often in terms of keeping them running. They're very old. And the grass improvements, again, got That would be a total scrape, a total redo. It's not turf. People have asked me that a million times if we're proposing turf there, and that is not the case.
Why not?
Soccer doesn't really want it. And I'll tell you, if you have the right ground, you have the right grass, and you can mow it enough times in a week, which is about 4 times a week, the playable surface for them is what they want on that particular piece. We've probably gone back and forth dozens of times, and really it's about that grass has been beaten down for so long, it's time to scrape it out, put some new in.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, I mean, even when the World Cup came over here, they put real grass inside the Silverdome.
It's most of the time,
They do like
that's what they
grass.
plan.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I played soccer when I was this big, but I didn't play it beyond that. And when I talk to our kids and our coaches that play soccer and play at the higher levels, soccer is a completely different game on turf as it is on grass. And so their recommendation, their druthers would be to play on regular turf. Again, that field has lasted a long, 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 long time. The bleachers are fine. We already did a study on those. Those are in great shape. Really, it's just a concession to grass. That's all the buildings in terms of that. I don't know if there are questions about buildings, questions about finance, questions about anything really. So,
If it passes,
When
I'm
would we see
wondering when some of these improvements are gonna take
yeah.
place.
So it's funny because same question. So in 2012, the bond passes in May. Probably 3 days after it passed, I started getting questions about, hey, we're gonna break ground this summer? Doesn't really work that way. You know, there's some design to it. We like to spend a lot of time, and we've spent a significant amount of time already, but if it were to pass, you spend a lot of time. It's like another full-time job, really thinking through all the scenarios, because again, you don't want to make missteps and cause problems for the people that come after you. So when we put in a new field or we put on a renovation, we're thinking about long-term. Is the building going to grow? What's the next use for this area? What's this? What's that? Where's the drainage go? All those particular things. You definitely see some projects in 2020, the summer of 2020. They're not going to be the big projects. They'd be some of the ones that don't take that 6 to 8 months of design to really get them right. So you could see roofs, you know. I don't know if you'd see a parking lot, maybe one of the smaller ones, maybe a Spencer one. We have a draw list too, I'll post that as well on our website that kind of shows what we think we would do. But again, it's also going to come down to contractors available, bid process. We're also very cognizant of when we bid and the size of packages we bid out, because there's some economy of scales if you can get out big enough packages at the right times that you can draw enough vendors that you're getting very competitive bids. That's another piece I think is really important. I think we saved a ton of money for taxpayers last time, or got really additional items because of the fact that we spent so much time doing it. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, and I don't know why I skipped over to the high school, but the band room, that's another item. Some of those auxiliary rooms that they particularly use as well. Yeah, new band room, floor, ceiling, cabinetry. You'd be amazed how much cabinetry costs for band equipment. It's crazy. It's very expensive. Wilson.
Will the cubbies lock?
Are you saying your friends are not trustworthy?
We got to talk about it
Wilson,
today.
just
literally.
so you know,
Did you really?
Yeah.
there is a camera in that particular.
Yeah, and there's a blind spot where people can crawl up in the ceiling. There were apparently there were three stands up there last Friday.
I'll take that back. Because I can see the whole room.
Oh, really? Will they get away with it?
Those are the pieces. Open any questions?
Yeah, I've got a pretty big, kind of long-winded question.
Okay.
Okay. So, I served Brighton Area Schools School Board as vice president for 4 years. And I've taught STEM education as faculty in the College of Engineering at University of Michigan for 20 years now. And STEM education is basically all I've ever done as an adult. I was a single member of the board who voted against this bond, and the reservations that I had then still exist. And those reservations are related to some of the facilities that we're adding. I've always thought that it's very important to have curriculum or need first, and then to back that up with facilities later, construction later, to meet those needs. And I'm deeply concerned, particularly with the multi-purpose facility. It's just so loosely defined that we don't know what it is or where it's going or what it's going to be used for. We have the STEAM Center edition, which is architecturally striking, but I've never heard anybody from DAS, teachers, educators, administrators, tell me what that facility would be used for on a daily or weekly basis. I don't know what having both of those facilities, in addition to having a media center at the high school that isn't used a lot. So now we have 3 very large, very expensive open spaces that are underutilized, and we're proposing 2 additional new ones at a cost of close to $10 million. And I just don't get, I don't see the curriculum and I don't see the need to back up the request for these new facilities.
So here's how I'd answer that. The media center in this building is utilized every day. And I can tell you on an hourly basis, there's classes, they're in there all the time, all the time. I can tell you that we don't have enough computer space in the building that obviously could go in the particular STEAM area or evolve into the STEAM area.
And I disagree with that because I've been involved in CS education in the building.
But I hear you. I'm just telling you what I see on a daily basis. In terms of the multi-purpose facility, I think a district our size could build 10 of them and fill it every single day. I think it's the same thing with gyms. Some people don't like those types of facilities, but it doesn't discount the usage or viability of those particular facilities. In terms of the STEAM Center itself, our autos classroom is full every day. Our engineering classes are full every day. We've made 3 classrooms work, but imagine a clean lab or a dirty lab like you get to work with your kids at the University of Michigan with in a high school. What an opportunity. So us to put these hard cement parameters around these programs, I think would be a disservice to our community. I think it'd be a disservice to our kids. And I think it'd be a disservice to the staff that's even just started to think of the different uses for this facility. This building, classrooms are full all day long. We don't have any open classroom space. So a flexible facility like this that would give people the opportunity to think beyond the traditional agrarian type setup that we have in a normal classroom, I think that opportunities are limitless.
But I think we're approaching this from 2 different viewpoints. And I think your approach is if we build it, they will come. And the approach that I always had when I was on the board is show me what curriculum, show me on a daily basis how these will be used,
Yep.
and nobody could ever tell me that.
So
And
I
I
would say
think
we
that's
already
a
have the
huge
curriculum.
problem.
I'd say we already have the curriculum. I would say our engineering class is in the thick of the curriculum. I would say our coding classes in those small labs are in the thick of the program. I would say our robotics program that has to rent out storage facilities around this community could have a home in there as well. And that's 140 kids. So I think the programs are there. I think the curriculum is there. I think what isn't there is the space to expand those particular opportunities or to utilize them to the fullest extent. Our robotics are in what used to be the bus washing area of the auto tech lab. Not really a space conducive to a world championship type team. That could be a space where they could utilize that. They could be in there the whole year. I'd say that facility probably had good utilization. But there's opportunities and curriculum already established.
I would like to see those mapped to these facilities. I mean, I would like to see how the curriculum on a regular basis would map to these facilities. Like I said, on a daily or weekly basis. That is just something that I have never seen. Tell me on a Monday what's going to happen, what's going to move into these areas, because I just don't see that need. I have never seen that need or how these facilities would improve the education in those areas.
You know, one of the things I would hope go in there is one thing I'm disappointed about is languages. And so my son is taking Spanish every year, but when he gets to be a senior, there's not a class for him. I'm real disappointed in that. I'm hoping that this building maybe could be set up where if there's 5 people that want to take that, they're in a video classroom with others around somewhere. I'm hoping that's a use plan, because the two things, I just don't see anything about languages. And we can't expect to compete without learning other languages. We just can't. And then the other thing, I asked my daughter, what does she want me to ask? And so she's a freshman. And she said safety. I didn't see safety one time listed here. I'm not in the schools. You know, school shootings to me, when I went to a small town school, the kids drove with guns in the back of their trucks to school. Okay, times are different. I don't see anything on here on safety. I know we did a lot of things with safety last time. I know we spent the money. I've been in, you know, multiple buildings, you know, have to show my face and that. But I guess, why isn't there anything on safety here?
I would say there are. Again, I think parking lots, like we talked about at Scranton, we talked extensively about the one pinch point in terms of the one entrance and exit. That's a safety issue. If you're talking physical aspect of the building, I would say we've done a whole bunch of stuff. I'm trying to think of other things we can do. The only other thing that we're looking at presently are boots for the doors. So what that means is if there's an emergency, you slide the boot into the door. We're working with our local county sheriffs in relation to that. We've done protective stuff to harden the exterior of the building. We've done protective stuff from the Raptor system inside the building. We just hired a SRO, Safety Resource Officer, for our middle school, which nobody else has. So that's why it's not as much in this particular issue. Plus, a lot of that stuff we pay for out of the general fund. I can tell you the Raptor system, we wrote a grant for and pay for out of that particular thing. The hardening of the exterior of the building, whether it be from ballistic film or locks on doors or scan system and swipe cards, we also look to pay for out of the general fund, just like some of that maintenance stuff we were talking about earlier, because that's a big thing people tell us all the time is some of these are maintenance issues, and you're not spending anything on maintenance, which we do. We spend a lot of it on that. But again, we also don't go out there and publicize everything that we do to harden the exterior and the interior of our buildings, because that's giving away some of the effectiveness of those particular safety plans. But I can tell you, as far as what we've purchased, what we've installed, we have a lot of stuff that's cutting edge in terms of that.
I will tell my daughter that. Thank you.
In those outside bathrooms that you're doing for the fields, that's huge, because when people are coming in the buildings after hours, how do you know they're leaving and so forth?
Yeah, it's harder, much harder. Dave, to get back to your question, I would love to sit down with you and run through that if you'd like. That'd be fine. And we could bring over some of our CTEs, some of our other teachers that are begging us on a daily basis for additional space. I'm just saying, if you want to do the mapping, we can map it up. We'll grab Ms. Mosier and we'll map it up.
Okay, like I said, when I was on the board, no educators that I knew of in Brighton area schools made any request for that facility. Nobody stated to me that there was ever a need, and I worked a lot with the STEM educators in Brighton area schools. So, and that was what motivated my vote no on this bond to get to this point, is that there wasn't an apparent need from any of the educators in Brighton area schools. So I'm wondering how...
We've done a lot of work since you've been off the board on that.
Yeah, and admittedly, clearly there has been, and give a lot of credit to the current board. But I just, and I don't even know what calling a 20,000 square foot addition of STEAM Center, what that even means. You know, it is a big open space, but...
I can tell you where we got that from. So when we went to visit other buildings that had STEAM centers, a lot of the flexible spaces, the clean labs, the dirty labs, those types of things, that I don't know what you call them at U of M, but they were called STEAM centers in those particular locations. And they were focused on getting your science, your technology, your engineering, arts, and mathematics into those rooms to kind of expand the opportunities for kids and their thinking in relation to it. So I don't know if that was when you're, I can't remember if that was when you're on the board or not. But I can tell you we have done work with those teachers since you've been off the board in relation to some of the programming in those spaces. But you wouldn't know that, could you not?
Well, I think the other thing you have to bear in mind too is when you come to the STEAM activities, technology is changing so fast that if you try to make it so hard, by the time you build that building, you'll already be behind the eight ball. And that's the challenge, right? I agree we have to be fiscally responsible, but if you look at innovation and how quickly different industries are moving, if we don't give our kids the ability, I'll take the auto shop as an example, right? Great facility, but does it accommodate autonomous, electric drive, all that stuff? And that's just in the automotive space. What about in the computer space, right? I agree there needs to be a master plan, but you gotta do the look ahead, or by the time you build it, it'll be too late.
It's just an anecdote, and maybe Wilson could help more, but it seems like, at least at the middle school level, when we were doing Science Olympiad, we were constantly having to utilize space outside of Brighton area schools because we didn't have space. Because, I don't know if robotics is probably different, but with Science Olympiad, you have so many different events and so many different coaches. There just isn't enough space. So it's a short
We have a coach
season,
here that
but Science
bends my ear
Olympiad
button all
alone
the
would fill that building up after school. At the middle school level, and I'm sure at the high school level, they have the.
At the high school level, we try to use Scranton space because it's hard to get space here.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
one way, we were at churches, we were at,
The library, right?
the
Homes.
library, community centers, that, people's houses, because we just didn't have any space in Brighton area schools for it, so.
Well, aren't these first two items really the same thing then? The multipurpose facility is really, will be used for STEAM, and then the STEAM will be used for STEAM. And so it's like, aren't those really the same?
No, only one aspect of the multipurpose facility could be STEAM generated. The rest could be athletics, the rest could be band, the rest could be community use.
Orchestra?
You could do a whole bunch of different things out there. The STEAM Center, I would say, is more locked into those 5 letters of that acronym. I think the multipurpose facility could lend itself to bigger opportunities or activities involved in the STEAM process. So let's say we have a drone building contest, which would be kind of neat in an engineering piece, and then you could set up a drone obstacle course or race and then test that theory in that multi-purpose facility. You couldn't do it in a building. You couldn't do it anywhere else. You couldn't do it in the winter unless you had a space that was big enough to accommodate some of those particular activities. So that would be just off the cuff, I could think of that would be an interesting opportunity. I could think of our Marching 300, which is a real point of pride for our district. They never have enough time to put together their shows, at least I hear from them, prior to the season. You get bad weather, you can't do it. There's another opportunity. And then on and on and on. If you're preparing for the World Championships, there's definitely a section of that particular facility that you could bring a floor in and prepare our kids to go win another World Championships in terms of robotics. So there's another opportunity. And again, those are just off the top of my head. I think somebody maybe in your field could be a real asset, or your field, I know you're involved too, a real asset in terms of helping us generate some additional ideas on this space. Because I'm not an expert in STEAM, but I know a lot of people that are. And if you build it, they will come. You're right. They will. We've already proven it with the last one. Further questions? Yeah, those are all great questions. Ivy, Wilson, a student perspective?
Well, I was just going to, I mean, personally, first of all, the Science Olympiad is one individual club, and that is always lacking space. You can verify, like, as you have. And regardless of the fact that it's one specific example, if you look at the clubs individually, they're like two major science clubs. If either of those, I mean, there's a high chance that even one of them, you know, if another science club forms, they're going to diverge and so on and so forth. I mean, if you think about it, there's no specific activity for rocketry, for drones, for anything of that. We're lacking, you know, clubs in general that address science. As soon as those start forming, we're going to need more space. And, you know, regardless of the fact that you may be an expert in these fields, you know, I am a child. I am the future. And I'm also, I like more because I'm a child, you know?
And he challenges and questions everything. He's a very curious kid. So he will look for those other STEM-based.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't put the A in it. It's a STEM thing for me.
He does art though too, so he likes to.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, even if we can't foresee all the possibilities of the space, it doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile adventure. I mean, realistically, what's the problem with a slightly increased tax rate for an overall, you know, much higher, you know,
Wait a minute, is this,
a much
He's a
higher
kid.
level economy?
is this increasing taxes? No, so you don't want to use
Okay,
those
yeah,
words.
okay, yeah. So
Wait a
let me.
second, let's be real
careful in
clear.
what you're
Let's
saying.
be real clear. It does
Yes.
not increase the current tax rate.
Right.
It does extend the number of years that you pay that
Right.
current tax rate for
It
what's
delays the
projected as a
decrease.
couple of years.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't fall off as fast. I think that's an important point to this.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That's what it is. And we don't set that chart. That's not us. So I think that's an important point.
In just using another one of my children as an example, because we had one child in the buildings trades program, right? So we've done that thing. We've utilized the different kids. But the youngest one, she's a dancer. And I can see that multi-purpose facility having all kinds of potential for new clubs and new even curricula. Anyway, that was more in the fine arts, athletic, kind of merging the two.
Sure.
Theater.
Why don't we have a $355 million bond and keep it at 7.19 mils, projecting into the future and forever? And add facilities, all kinds of square, you know, I mean, it's like, that's the logic going the other direction of if we're gonna go for it, let's go for it all and build.
Because the field of dance is not moving at an exponential rate.
But that's real, if we're saying that, you know, I mean, that's the argument.
What I'm actually saying with the STEAM Center and with the proposed multipurpose facility is through our focus groups, when we talk to the band, when we talk to the technology, when we talk to different groups, and you can talk to any of them from the youth all the way up, additional space was something that was a common thread through that. Could they envision this particular piece? Maybe, maybe not. But it was additional space, it was additional opportunity. 350 million, I don't even know what you'd build. I wouldn't even know what to say for that. I don't even know if we have enough property, to build on that. So, again, I understand your point in terms of that, but I don't know if people would see that as reasonable. Maybe you don't see this as reasonable. That's your opinion. That's good. You can have that. But the groups we met with to generate the list did see some of these as reasonable. That's why they made the list, and that's why we put this out. Again, I don't generate any of these. I get this from groups, I get it from the board, I present factually, just like I'm doing tonight,
Yep.
and then the community decides.
What were the groups?
We met with band, we met with choir, we met with youth sports. We've talked to all of our CTE teachers after you were on the board, and while you're on the board, but once or twice in terms of that. And dance already has a place in this particular building. I don't know if you knew that or not. They have dance.
I don't, and I apologize, she's my first dancer.
PTO groups we've met with, community groups. Presented at Rotary a number of times with the local business owners. I had a presentation the other day at Tim Hortons with some veteran people that wanted to know what was in this particular round. So, I've been to a number of different groups. I always put myself out there if anybody wants to talk about this. They get home. So, understand the point, I really do. Ivy, I didn't hear from you.
So in total, how many buildings are you hoping to create?
So there's only really 2 additions.
Okay.
The one addition,
And then
big
with the-
additions, you know,
with-
you have some bathrooms and concessions that there's a new bathroom concession at Maltby. There would be a replacement of the existing one at the Beck Building, which is where you came over for the interview. The STEAM Center hooked to the back of the high school, and then the multipurpose facility. Those are really the additional buildings, if you want to call them.
And then that would be in addition to the dome, or not dome, but like the metal structure,
Yeah.
would that be? Okay. And then, just for like the space part,
Sorry.
I'm not involved in very like robotics. I know people who are within that. But my only concern would be like, I guess for the curriculum part of it, because I know a lot of people I know have been kicked out of like graphics or like
Yeah.
engineering programs because there's
Space.
just not enough room.
Yeah.
And, but I'd still be concerned about like the classroom, I guess, the purpose of the classrooms, if they are classrooms. Because like if they did want more of a open space, like the library, that's a pretty open space versus smaller areas versus like a huge science room.
Great.
So I have to figure out that aspect of it.
I think the other thing people kind of get locked into is you have to put a conceptual design up, but again, it's just like many of the other things we constructed before, they change, they evolve. I think the technology statement was very similar. When we originally passed and were looking at the technology, I could have never envisioned 2,500 Chromebooks that are now in the district. I mean, I didn't envision that. Thank you, appreciate it.
So the multipurpose facility,
Yep,
I still don't know what it is and where it
it's
goes.
100, it could house a 110-yard long turf surface. That surface could be covered as well. Again, that's a space that could be utilized for athletics, could be utilized for technology, robotics.
So it's as big as a football field, right?
It's a little bigger.
So it's slightly bigger than a football
Yeah,
field.
you could fit a particular football field, and then there's a little offshoot again. Again, that one would be designed, but the space itself would be about that square footage.
And once installed, it's permanently installed.
Yeah, it has a 30-year warranty on it, so it's not, that was one of the big concerns we heard on the temporary dome, was that how long something like that being taken up and put down if you're actually going to last, valid point. So again, we went back out and looked for more permanent options and brought it back, and that's kind of where we.
All right, so this football field size structure, how many stories is it?
It's like a pole barn. So if you look out
Okay,
at,
so it's like a pole barn size.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's like a metal structure. It's not metal though, it's made out of a PVC type material with an R42 value, so it's insulated, heated, lit, those types of things.
Okay. What are the proposed locations for it?
As I said earlier, originally it was to tie it to the end of the existing stadium, kind of where the VIP lot, and then
Yep.
up into the grassy area. That would be fairly tight. Maltby, if you looked at the back portion of the wooded area, you know, to where it wouldn't impact housing, it's kind of what we're looking at each property, because it's a fairly large structure. If you look at Scranton, there's a wooded area behind the existing sports complexes that could come off Lee Road. And if you look at Hawkins, you'd have to do some redesign out there, but somewhere out in that particular field on Hawkins, again, you'd have to look at soil, you'd have to do borings, you'd have to do all those things to really lock down a place. But those are the 4 facilities that